some of the most important ones were left off my resume. For example, when I was in college, I actually led my dorm in noise violations. I had my fake ID confiscated twice. I borrowed a lot of money to go to school, and I still can't figure out where all my work-study cash went. I actually got arrested in college once for an on-campus food fight. And the only activism I was involved with when I was in school is when they shut down our on-campus pub. To this day, it's funny, I never make my bed, I can't remember names well, and I eat horribly. Even worse, in 1998, I took my student loans that were supposed to be for grad school, and I used them to start a company and a hedge fund. And within the next 18 months, I made $12 million. However, in a period of 1 week, in the spring of 2000, I lost it all and found myself, 25 years old, so deeply in debt, I owed $4 million in my own name. That is a colossal screw up, and it makes your student loan seem pretty insignificant by comparison. It took me 5 of the hardest, ugliest years of my life, sweating, scrapping, selling, just convincing anyone to deal with me, before eventually I clawed my way back to the February of 2005. I made it back to $0 of net worth. Exactly $0. I tell you now, you will never feel richer than when you're worth exactly $0. In fact, the last debt I repaid was to Sally Mae, the student loan borrower. And when I repaid it due to a clerical error, it turned out I had actually overpaid my loan by $23.82. So Sally Mae sent me a refund check. And I'm here to tell you that I've never cashed that check, actually. It's still on my refrigerator, because I just really like knowing that Sally Mae owes me money. Basically a week-long, like 72 hours a week-long period, I went from being about $12 million to the good to $4 million in the hole, like that.
So if you're up 12 million, why don't you just say, you know what, I'm cashing out, I'm going in freaking bonds, like.
Right. You remember that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, take it away from dad and make it like rich bro, poor bro. So I'm surrounded by all these buddies who are like limo drivers, bartenders. All my buddies are like, dude, you're amazing. You picked such amazing stocks. They're going to the moon. I just bought a boat by following your picks, et cetera. Like, amazing. I was in this echo chamber of people like convincing me that I was a genius and convincing me that I was doing it right. And when things are going well, you're always convinced it's because you've somehow impacted them. When things are going bad, you always want to chalk it up to bad luck, right? When in reality, I think we sometimes realize, like, when things go really well, it's because, holy shit, our number came up and we got lucky. And when things go bad, we go do a postmortem and realize we screwed it all up, right? And so, so at the time, I've just got all these people around me reinforcing that I'm a stock picking genius. And, you know, and every time I make another bet, I make more money. I mean, the market had been like this for 18 months, and I basically understood telecom, and I spoke Spanish, and all these things triangulate to me being like, oh, of course I'm making money in this stock. When really it's all a load of bullshit. And like, I was riding that bubble wave like everybody. So it completely explodes. Starting in the year 2000, at 25 years old, without any money to my name and no network to fall back on, I had to dig myself out of a $2.8 million hole. And so here I am trying to slug it out, and I've got this business card that says Chris Sacca, and everyone's like, oh, it'll come together for you, kid. And I'm like, I don't need it like long term, I need something now. So I came up with this idea to build an entity that I called the Salinger Group. It just sounded mnemonic. I went through a bunch of domains, the way you look at domains and stuff like that. And I was like, the Salinger Group has a nice ring to it. I had now Crystal, who's my fiance, she's been my best friend forever. And so she drew up a logo. It was really slick. I had a guy off Elance build a website for me. Amazing. And I just went into business as a Salinger Group. What did you claim to do? Like, what was your? My website said a whole lot of nothing. Like, if somebody goes to like the Wayback Machine, you might see it. It's really awesome. It says nothing. It says, we advise blah, 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 blah. And so, and I didn't have any physical address or any phone number because I was living in a piece of shit hovel in Foster City that cost me like $800 a month. And so I set about as a Salinger Group, and my name was Chris Sacca, principal of the Salinger Group. And I went to the same networking events with this card, and I'd hand it to people. And they're like, oh yeah, the Salinger Group, I know you guys. You guys do good work. We'd love to collaborate with you on this project. It was pure psychology, and suddenly, like, I'm getting gigs. Suddenly, I was doing work, and it panned out for me. And through that avenue, I ended up getting really involved in startups, and I ended up with a full-time gig at a company called Spidera that was competing with Akamai. And I was an executive there. I had a bunch of different executive roles, and then Google found me there, and then I ended up at Google. Dude, Google was the opportunity of a lifetime. I mean, I loved it there. I didn't even think...
What was your role? What did you get hired in as?
I got hired in to buy data centers. They needed someone who was a business guy, technical, and a lawyer all in one. And they basically gave me and another guy a big budget and said, go away, don't tell anyone you work for Google. We want to buy a bunch of data centers because we need all this server capacity, and we don't want Microsoft to know how big this business is getting. And so
that's crazy.
And so it was really crazy and really fun because the scale of Google's business.
So you're like, I'm going to use pull out my old business cards, that old LLC that you created.
I did do deals on behalf of the Salinger Group. There's no doubt. And so we would pick an area. The guy who worked with me on this is this guy, Eric Asnapius, who's really technical and an amazing guy. And we would pick a geographic area, and then he and I would hit the ground, visit all these different places, look at fiber availability, power, the tax regimes there, and then we'd start negotiating with like local city officials and stuff like that to give us access to land or let us use that old aluminum smelter, or get us a high voltage line in here, or where are we going to buy transformers? Are they going to come off eBay and stuff like that?
At what point did they figure out you were Google? I mean, did you come in here even saying that, or you're like, I'm going to wire you this funds?
Literally at the last moment.
At the last second.
Yeah. And we're talking about commitments that were in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right.
I have such a deep sense of loyalty. I mean, one of the reasons why you and I get along is we kind of grew up in similar neighborhoods with similar people.
Yeah, loyalty is everything.
And if I feel even mildly betrayed, I will river quiet the shit out of a bridge. Like, I will just...
Yeah, no, it's gonna burn the... Yeah.
Oh, geez, I
Nuclear.
fire up the TNT and just go nuts, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I just can't help myself. Like, I grew up... I mean, some of my closest friends are still the guys like literally from my block.
Right.
And I just grew up with like a code of loyalty, and so when that gets betrayed, I go bananas.
And
I wish I didn't do that. Generally speaking, I'm on one board out of 85 companies, and that's just because my partner who runs our seed fund, Matt Mazzio, and I build close enough relationships with our founders that I don't need a formalized relationship to influence the outcomes for for those companies. They want to work with us. They want our advice.
I flew out and I spent time with Chris in San Francisco, then Los Angeles, then back in San Francisco. So it was a pretty busy few days. It brought out a whole competitive side of Chris that I think you need some sort of competition to really do.
That was weak sauce.
He really, really wanted to beat me, and he totally kicked my butt. But talking to him is a riot. He'll say, oh, I've got a Kobe Bryant story, but that's off the record. Or, you'll hear all these names across all walks of life so quickly. His Rolodex is insane. Part of it is because he's just built up respect with so many different people, but part of it is that along the way, he has kind of used that as a measure of his own validation. The Midas list actually had a lot of personal meaning for Sacca, which I did not know going into the project and was really surprised by. He was a lawyer in the first .com bubble and at Fenwick & West, one of the big tech law firms, and he got laid off. Started looking for jobs, and he saw the Midas list, so he literally went down the list for weeks trying to cold call, get meetings, and meet with the Midas list.
And nobody ever opened a door or gave me a break. And that stuck for me, that I wanted to be on that list someday. And so
Chris doesn't have a big firm. He doesn't have a PR person or any sort of institution behind him. So he's kind of forced his way onto the list as a billionaire completely on his own. His friends are unparalleled in the Valley, but he also made a lot of enemies. A big part of the story that we found difficult was actually navigating some of those more frayed relationships in Chris's life too. Uber's worth $41 billion. Chris and his investments have 4% of the company. That's billions of dollars. And yet the CEO barely speaks to Chris. One of the things Chris said in the story was that he's always had a uniform. Lately, it's these rayon polyester cowboy shirts that he wears, and we got him to wear a more muted one for the cover, but some of them are, if you Google him, extremely garish. He's got almost 70 of them. It seems like he's dialing back some of the investment a bit, and we're going to see a lot more of him in showbiz. Talking to him, he will talk to you for hours. He waylaid our fact checker for 3.5 hours in one sitting, and that was probably how my first call went too. He loves his radio appearances on This American Life. He's a great talker, great personality. I think that we will see him do more show business of some kind. I mean, the guy lives in Los Angeles.
It's just an incredible story of underachievement, of potential that was never realized. And so I'd be really excited for someone with some product vision to go in there and take some chances. We know that it's got the most valuable corpus of data, the most valuable body of information in the world. There's stuff in there for every person on this planet that's interesting. They have just failed repeatedly to surface that in an easy to digest way for most normal people.
Have you been disappointed with Jack's product leadership? Have you been hoping he'd bring in someone else?
Yeah, I was really hoping to see Ev get back involved in the company. That was one of the reasons why we put a lot of our heft behind Jack coming back in, and why
one of the reasons why. On the table?
Yeah, it was to have Ev not necessarily back in a formal role, but I think he's the one who's always had the product vision at that company. You know, he was the one who took it from 2 million users to 200 million users. And though Ev might not be the kind of guy who wants to keynote on the big stage, et cetera, his ideas have always been a couple years ahead of the rest of the market. Case in point, 4 years ago, he was pounding the table that we needed to get into live video. I don't think any of us understood the urgency, and now it's obvious that live video is the evolution of all these platforms.
So why didn't that happen?
I'm not sure, but it's been a disappointment. I think Bain's side of the house, I really wanted to see Adam Bain's role grow, and I didn't see it grow like we had been told it was going to grow. And I think he's delivered on the revenue side to the extent he can without user growth. But I'd really like to see this go to a partner who has distribution to just grow it organically using other platforms, and at the same time say, guys, we've got the best data and we've got it faster than anybody else out there. Why aren't we making it easier?
Dick Costolo was just on Bloomberg and said he thinks that Twitter can still be an independent company. What do you think?
I don't see how it gets materially better over the next 2 years without fresh blood. I just don't see a path to that. I don't hear that there's any Twitter 2.0 or 3.0 or 4.0 in the works. I haven't heard anyone talk with great passion about what's coming down the pike right now.
So do you hope for an acquisition? Do you hope for a new CEO?
I hope for an acquisition. I think there are some great product teams that this fits in with naturally, and that's not a new thing for me. I've been saying this for a long time. I think it is a natural complement to at least 4 or 5 companies out there. And
Who
so
would
I'd
you
like to see. I mean, look, it's an obvious Google fit. I think Google underestimated the company for a long time because it's not scientifically hard to pull off. You know, in the same way that Google kind of underestimated Blogger for years. Blogger, to a computer scientist, just looks like a front end on FTP. But it's a canvas on which humanity just paints incredible, incredible thoughts. That's what Twitter is, but to the scale that Blogger never even achieved. So I look at a Facebook. Facebook has tried to copy this company a bunch of times, and they haven't pulled it off yet. But I think they could really bring some great vision to the curation of the tweets. How do we service the best tweets? If you and I are busy all day and we check into Twitter, I don't want to just see the 10 most recent tweets. I want to see the 10 best tweets that I missed, the ones that have the most engagement. I love looking at greatest hits. That's why SportsCenter exists, is so you can see the highlights of the day and you don't watch just the game that happens to be on at that moment. I think Facebook gets that and could really help in that way. I think Microsoft would be able to absorb this business and actually take some chances with it.
Disney?
Yeah, Disney makes sense. I think people are overweighting the importance of media onto the platform. The truth is there's a lot of audience there's a lot of engagement, and if you do that, media partners will come. You don't necessarily have to do a strategic media access deal in order to get people excited about a platform like this. You just have to make it the most fun place to engage with that content and the easiest place to monetize, and then content shows up. Years ago, I brought Kobe Bryant by the Twitter offices, and they showed him how NBA was partnering with Twitter to provide clips of the games. And Kobe said, wow, how much did you have to pay the NBA to get that? And everybody in the room laughed. He's like, why are you laughing? He's like, no, they gave it to us for free and we're going to split the money. He's like, really? And it was in the NBA's interest because they know there's a really powerful audience there that when they engage with those clips are going to drive to tune into the actual broadcast. They've got the data that backs that up. So you don't need to do a strategic content partner deal.
You were the biggest shareholder at one time. Have you sold any Twitter shares? Or have you held
I've
on?
definitely sold some Twitter shares, yeah.
How much?
The way I would put it is, I don't own as many as I used to because I'm not an idiot, but I own more than I should because I'm an idiot. Yeah.
How much do you think Twitter would go for?
An acquisition is priced into the price right now. As much as I'm a cheerleader for that company, I still believe there's a lot of potential. It's really hard for something that's not growing to justify paying over where it's trading in the market right now.
Okay.
I think it's pretty much priced to perfection.